You ever been in a room so full of power, so full of prestige, that every single conversation feels like it could change the course of history? Well, that's exactly what this night was supposed to be. Just another exclusive gala, another evening of small talk, designer suits, and handshakes between the rich and powerful. But what happened that night, nobody saw coming. Because in the middle of all the glitz and glamour, something unexpected unfolded. Something that left even the most seasoned political elites in stunned silence. And at the heart of it, Barron Trump, the young man everyone had underestimated, and Jonathan Reed, a sharp-tongued political commentator known for his relentless attacks on the Trump family. But this time, the narrative didn't go the way Reed had planned. The gala was the kind of event only a select few would ever get to see. Held in one of New York's most exclusive ballrooms, it was a night reserved for the elite. Senators, CEOs, media moguls, and of course, the families that had shaped America's political landscape. The chandeliers sparkled, the soft hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of champagne glasses, and the air buzzed with the quiet tension that always lingers when the country's most powerful figures gather in one place. Among them was Jonathan Reed, a man who had built his career on sharp commentary, provocative statements, and unfiltered critiques of political figures, especially the Trump family. He had spent years dissecting their every move, turning their triumphs into controversies, their mistakes into headlines. And on this particular night, he saw an opportunity. An easy target, or so he thought. That target was Barron Trump. The youngest son of a former president, Barron had spent most of his life out of the spotlight. The media had always painted him as the quiet one, the reserved one, the one who stayed in the background while his father took center stage. He wasn't a politician, he wasn't a businessman. He was just a young man, barely out of his teens, navigating a world where every step he took was watched, analyzed, and often criticized. But on this night, that would change, because when Jonathan Reed decided to take a jab at Barron Trump in front of the entire room, he expected silence. He expected awkward laughter. He expected the same dismissive response he had gotten from so many others. What he didn't expect was what Barron did next. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about Barron Trump. Now, if you've been paying attention, you already know this wasn't just another glamorous night in high society. This was the kind of night that starts with polite smiles and ends with whispered headlines, and at the center of it all, a moment no one saw coming. The setup for conflict, Jonathan Reed, wasn't the type to hold back. He thrived in controversy. Built his reputation on saying things others wouldn't dare to. His words could make or break a politician, and his opinions carried weight in the media world. But tonight, he wasn't on a news set. He wasn't protected by a teleprompter or a controlled debate stage. He was face to face with Barron Trump. And that's when he made his move. A smirk curled on Reed's lips as he raised his glass, eyes locking onto Barron from across the room. He sauntered over, his voice carrying just loud enough for those around to hear. Well, the quiet Trump. Didn't expect to see you here, kid. The room tensed. Conversations slowed. People turned, their curiosity piqued. Barron, seated with an air of quiet confidence, simply raised an eyebrow. He didn't flinch. Didn't react. He just watched. That only seemed to encourage Reed. Must be nice, Reed continued, swirling his drink. Being able to sit back while your family does all the heavy lifting. No pressure to actually prove yourself, right? A few guests chuckled nervously, not because it was funny, but because they could feel the tension thickening in the air. Barron still said nothing. That silence, it wasn't uncertainty. It wasn't hesitation. It was control. Reed, mistaking it for weakness, leaned in, lowering his voice but making sure the insult carried. Or maybe, he said, you're just smart enough to know that if you actually spoke, people might realize you don't have much to say. The shift. The moment hung in the air like a blade suspended above the room. This was it. The moment everyone expected Barron to laugh it off, to avoid confrontation, to do what was easy. But what happened next? Nobody was ready for it. Barron set down his glass, slowly, purposefully, and then, for the first time that night, he spoke. Jonathan, he said, his voice steady, unshaken, you've made a career out of talking, out of twisting words to fit whatever narrative keeps your ratings up. Reed blinked. The crowd went dead silent. You talk about pressure, Barron continued, tilting his head slightly. Try growing up with the world watching your every move, waiting for you to fail. Try being judged before you even get the chance to speak. You assume silence means nothing to say. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough. But sometimes, silence is just patience. The weight of his words settled over the room. Reed, caught completely off guard, opened his mouth, then shut it. This wasn't the response he had expected. This wasn't a flustered teenager scrambling to defend himself. This wasn't someone easy to intimidate. This was different. This was a moment. The guests who had once been chuckling now sat frozen, watching as the dynamic shifted. The power had left Reed's hands, and for the first time in his career, he had no comeback. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Because what happened next changed everything. You ever witness a moment so powerful, so unexpected, that it flips the entire room upside down? That's exactly what happened here. Because what started as a subtle jab, a simple attempt to humiliate Barron Trump, had just turned into something much, much bigger. And Jonathan Reed? Well, he had no idea just how bad this was about to get. The tension boils over. For the first time in his career, Jonathan Reed was speechless. The man who always had a witty comeback, who could twist any situation to his advantage, just stood there, his face shifting from amused arrogance to something dangerously close to panic. The silence in the ballroom stretched longer than it should have. Guests shifted in their seats. Some leaned in, others exchanged glances, their expressions saying what none of them dared to voice. Did that really just happen? And then, someone clapped, not loud, not dramatic, but just enough to cut through the thick air of tension. Then, another, and before anyone could process it, a quiet ripple of applause spread through the crowd. It wasn't overwhelming, it wasn't exaggerated, but it was there. People weren't just watching anymore, they were choosing sides. And Jonathan Reed? He was on the losing end. Reed tries to recover. Reed's smirk twitched. He had to take back control. His reputation, his credibility, everything was on the line. He let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head as if this was all some kind of joke. "Wow," he scoffed, raising his drink as if to toast. "Didn't realize you had a speech prepared, Barron. Guess that's what happens when you have all the time in the world to sit back and watch while the adults handle things." He was trying, he really was. But the problem? Nobody was laughing. Not this time. Barron didn't need to say another word. He had already won. Reed felt it, the shift in the room, the weight of his own miscalculation. And just like that, the dynamic he had carefully crafted for years began to crumble. But then, something even worse happened. The cameras were rolling. You see, Reed had always thrived in spaces where he controlled the narrative. He chose his words carefully when the cameras were on, made sure the angles were just right. But tonight? Tonight was different. Someone in the crowd had been recording. And not just someone, several people. Phone screens glowed across the ballroom, catching every moment. The shift in Reed's expression, the way Barron held his ground, the moment the applause started, all of it. And once something like this makes it online, there's no coming back. And that, my friends, is where things get interesting. Because within minutes, this clip wasn't just something whispered about at a high-profile gala. It was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, people couldn't stop talking about it. But here's the real question. Did this moment just reshape Barron Trump's entire future? Or did Jonathan Reed just make the biggest mistake of his career? Comment below and let me know what you think. And if you're loving this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Some moments fade into the background, forgotten as soon as they happen. And then, there are moments like this. The kind that explode into something no one saw coming. The kind that leave a permanent mark. The internet erupts within minutes. The video had already started making waves. By the time Barron and Reed had moved on to opposite ends of the ballroom, the footage had already hit Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. The captions? Brutal. Barron Trump just ended Jonathan Reed's entire career in 30 seconds flat. The quiet Trump speaks. And it's game over. Reed thought he had a moment. Turns out, it wasn't the one he wanted. And then it hit mainstream media. First, it was just a few bloggers, independent commentators, picking up the clip and dissecting it frame by frame. But within hours, major news networks were running headlines. Fox News, Barron Trump shuts down Jonathan Reed, the moment that stunned Washington. CNN, Unexpected showdown at elite gala. Did Jonathan Reed go too far? MSNBC. A shift in the political landscape? What Barron Trump's viral moment means for the future. And the most unexpected part, even outlets that had never been friendly to the Trump family couldn't ignore what had happened, because this wasn't about politics anymore. This was about a power shift. Jonathan Reed faced the backlash. By the next morning, Reed's team was in full panic mode. The comments on his latest posts, a disaster. "Dude, you got wrecked. Just take the L and move on. Never seen someone go from overconfident to speechless that fast." Reed's whole career is built on tearing people down. Guess he wasn't ready for someone who knew how to fight back. His publicist scrambled to put out a statement, something to spin the situation. But nothing worked. Every attempt to explain, to shift blame, to laugh it off, fell flat. Because no matter what Reed said, no matter how many TV appearances he made, the video was still there. People had seen him crumble, and no amount of damage control could erase that. Barron Trump's unexpected rise. But the real shocker? Barron wasn't seeking this attention. He wasn't trying to go viral. He hadn't planned for this. And yet, for the first time in his life, he was the one leading the conversation. People who had never paid attention to him before were suddenly curious. Who was Barron Trump beyond just being the son of a former president? Talk shows started debating, is this the start of something bigger? Did Barron Trump just prove he's ready for the public stage? Is this the moment that changed the way we see him forever? The media loved it. The public couldn't get enough. And as for Barron, well, he just went about his life, business as usual, because while everyone else was scrambling to analyze what had just happened, he already knew the truth. He didn't need to say much to make an impact. He never had. And that what made him different. So now, I turn the question over to you. Was this just a one-time viral moment, or is Barron Trump stepping into something bigger? Could this be the beginning of a political rise? Or is he just setting the record straight on who he really is? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story, it's far from over. Trust me. You're going to want to see what happens next. Some moments are fleeting, here one day, gone the next. But others leave a mark, a shift, a message that lingers long after the night has ended. And that's exactly what this was. A defining moment. Jonathan Reed walked into that gala thinking he controlled the room, thinking he could throw a quick jab and walk away unscathed. But he learned a hard lesson that night. Power isn't just about who speaks the loudest. It's about who speaks with purpose. And Barron Trump? He didn't need a stage, a political title, or an agenda to prove himself. All he needed was a moment. A moment to show the world that the quiet ones, the ones who observe, who calculate, who choose their words carefully, they're the ones you should never underestimate. Because in a world that thrives on noise, sometimes silence speaks the loudest. The bigger picture. But let's step back for a second. This isn't just about Barron Trump or Jonathan Reed. It's about all of us. It's about how we judge people before they even get a chance to define themselves. How we assume that if someone is quiet, they have nothing to offer. But strength doesn't always come from being the loudest in the room. Sometimes it's about knowing when to speak and when to let your actions do the talking. And that's a lesson we could all learn from. Final call to action. Engaging the audience. So now, I want to hear from you. Was this just a viral moment, or did Barron Trump just change the way people see him forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's get the conversation going. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because trust me, we've got more stories like this coming. And you don't want to miss them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.